It's been quite a while since our last video, but something quite special to kick things back off today. Today I have a 2023 BMW M8 Competition Convertible here in this beautiful tanzanite blue color. Again, we got the latest BMW laser light headlights, the full carbon exterior package with carbon diffuser, and take a look at those massive kidney grills. I think this grille design is where BMW peaked, and as much as I love the new M3 and M4, I think it would be great to get back to this design. Moving back around the car, I think the first thing you notice is the massive front hood, which underneath holds that 4.4 liter turbocharged V8 producing 617 horsepower and 553 pound-feet of torque. Moving down to the wheels, these are not my favorite M wheels, but they look fantastic on this color. And of course, we have the Rolls-Royce style spinning hubcaps here as well. Moving around the rest of the car, the mirrors are folded in right now. Let's take care of that. We have these beautiful carbon mirrors, of course, with the distinctive M wing on the side. Just beautiful. And then on the inside here, we have these secure orange seats. Light up logo on the seats, beautiful quilted leather all the way across. I think they did a really good job with this interior. This has the older iDrive system, which in my opinion looks a hell of a lot better than the latest stuff, because this one has a real dashboard rather than just a tablet kind of stuck onto the dash there. Coming back around the car, again, wheels with those floating hubcaps. And I think this is where the M8 really shines. Just that rear profile is absolutely fantastic. What just happened there, this car locks automatically when you walk away, so I have the key in my pocket, and it just locked itself on its own. And that applies across most of the latest BMW lineup. So just coming back here, I mean, this bottom third here is just beautiful, so muscular, so aggressive. You've got the quad pipes, of course, and again, in keeping with the front, we have more carbon fiber bits here at the back with the diffuser. And just take a look at the way that trunk lid goes up, again with a little piece of carbon fiber for a bit of a spoiler there. Coming back along here, we have real functional air vents, which reduce pressure from the wheel well, help cool the brakes, again with more of that carbon fiber and an M8 logo here. I think it's a beautiful sunny day here in Michigan. You can really see the metallic reflection in that tanzanite blue paint. I've definitely read on some online forums that it's not the most durable paint, but I think with a nice coat of PPF, you will be just fine. So we have keyless entry. These are soft close doors, so just leaving that there, it'll close on its own. I do think that's a bit of an excessive feature on this car. The doors are super heavy, and they are absolutely massive, so not that hard when you're pulling it shut to get enough momentum to just close on its own, but the soft close feature is there for those times where you didn't quite close it all the way. Now, I'll get a bit into this later, but rear seat room is not great. In an emergency, you can definitely fit two adults back here, but it's not going to be comfortable, particularly if the roof is up. There's not going to be that much headroom, and legroom is not great, as you can see here. All right, so welcome to the interior of the M8. So I think one of the first things you notice is just how nice all of the materials are. We've got our Bowers & Wilkins sound system here, which also has some lighting inside, looks amazing at night. These aluminum grills, super high quality. Got the quilted leather all over. Even the window switches are made out of a super nice metal. They're very clicky, really satisfying to use. Seat memory and the door unlock lock controls. Moving to the steering wheel, no big surprise here. This is very standard BMW steering wheel for the latest M models. So we've got these M switches here, which feel great. I love how they look. So these will change your modes. So these are customizable. Just switch into M1, tightens up the suspension a little bit more aggressive throttle control. But M2 is where this car becomes a completely different animal. This is the button that takes this from something that drives like an M850 to driving like an M8 Competition as this car was intended. So a double press here will put us into M dynamic mode, or MDM. Get a little pop-up on the screen there. Also, little attention to detail. If you notice, the car there was in the Tanzanite blue spec, and it was a convertible. So great to see that level of attention to detail even in the dash. So in this mode, this car might as well be a different vehicle entirely. The steering tightens up, the valves open up even more, the shifting is a lot quicker, and this becomes a much more aggressive car, and that's where you can really push it to its limits. So if you're looking to take it out on a nice drive, pushing that M2 button twice is essential. So coming over here, I think another thing I want to talk about is the iDrive system. So this is iDrive 7. The latest version of iDrive is currently iDrive 8, and I'll pull up a quick picture, but you'll notice in the latest 3 Series and 4 Series, there's kind of this tablet that just goes across the dashboard. In my opinion, iDrive 7 is far superior. They have done, you know, this beautiful dashboard here. You have 2 separate screens. They're well integrated into the cabin, whereas iDrive 8 kind of kills a lot of these buttons, which I'm very against, as well as it kind of sticks just this tablet on the dashboard, which might look fine in an electric car, but for an internal combustion $165,000 vehicle, I am expecting a nicely designed dashboard with some nice buttons as well. So this car's interior is equipped with the glossy carbon fiber, which also looks amazing. I think really appreciate it. Would be nice to have a little less gloss black in the interior, but overall I think this isn't the worst implementation of it I've seen. It doesn't hold that many fingerprints, so I can live with it. Even the dials on the air conditioning are just super satisfying, really high quality. You get this knurled metal here. The vents feel great. And of course, this is a touchscreen as well. And it can also be controlled with this classic iDrive knob down here, which I think is great for when you're driving down the road and you want to be paying attention to what's in front of you rather than what's on the screen. So moving back down here, we have a classic M shifter. I think this is a pretty good implementation of an electric shifter. We have the embossed M logo, tricolor M stitching, which is also on the steering wheel, as well as the seat belts. Beautiful quilted leather and secure orange here. And of course that, you know, goes throughout the interior. Even looking down here into the footwell, that leather extends down here. Everything's just covered, even under the steering wheel here, and of course up on the dash. So this is an amazing interior. I think BMW absolutely killed it. Storage wise, we have a bit of a center console here. It's not the deepest one, but more than enough for a vehicle like this. And then of course we have our convertible controls. So that neck scarf buttons right here, the movable top buttons right there, and then as well as your seat controls, which it's great to see are integrated right here for easy access. So focusing in a bit more on the dash here, this is fully customizable, and I think BMW did a really good job giving you different options. So right now, this is kind of the comfort, just normal driving setup that I have. But if I go ahead and push the M mode button, what this is going to do is get rid of some of the driver assistance systems, and it's going to give me a much more driver focused display. So much easier view of my RPMs, the red line, what gear I'm in. If I switch into drive here, you'll see that it gives me, I'm in first gear. So that it just makes it a lot easier to see versus kind of the comfort setup where you can see it's a bit harder to see what gear you're in. That's all the way down there. This is the full merino leather package, which means the leather extends absolutely everywhere. Doors, under here, you know, up on the dash, the leather extends absolutely everywhere. I think it's a must-have package, frankly, for a car at this price range. Just gives you, the leather extends everywhere. I think once you see it in one M car, you will immediately notice when an M car doesn't have this package, just because the difference in materials becomes really obvious. So just one final feedback on the interior of this car. I think most convertibles will have a seatbelt extender. This car does not have that, so I think you find yourself having to reach all the way back there and grab the seatbelt. Not the biggest deal, but I know with the Audi convertible products, at least there's a piece of plastic or metal basically that will bring the seatbelt to you, and would be nice to see in a car in this price range. This interior looks amazing at night. Of course, you have your ambient lighting, which you're able to customize that to whatever color you would like. I have it in orange right now to match the color of the seats. All the buttons and everything here are beautifully lighted. It's a bit chilly right now, and I do have the top down. So right now I have the scarf feature activated, as well as my heated seats. So the scarf is keeping my neck warm. And then another thing that surprised me, I didn't know about this until I turned the heated seats on. Both these armrests, both on the left and the right, as well as for the passenger, these surfaces are all heated, which is super, super nice when the top is down and temperatures are a bit chillier. Of course, there's the heated steering wheel, heated seats, and I also want to point out these beautiful Bowers & Wilkins speakers, which just look amazing at night. Bit of a better view here on the passenger side, and of course that extends into the back. Let's talk powertrain. So powering this car is a beautiful 4.4 liter V8 producing 617 horsepower and I believe 553 pound-feet of torque. Now, BMW is notoriously known for underrating their power figures, and I have no doubt that that is the case with the M8 as well. This thing is an absolute rocket ship off the line. Car and Driver has this car pinned at a 2.5 second 0 to 60, which is blisteringly quick. This car gets you in trouble super fast. And again, given the xDrive system, that power is delivered super, super smoothly. It's all available. You get to use all that horsepower, whether it's 617 or what I believe is actually slightly more, but you get to use all of it. And when your foot is down all the way, you are going to break the rear tires loose a little bit, but again, it is not difficult to reach that 2.5 second 0 to 60 number, just given how consistent the xDrive system allows anyone to be. I think throttle feel is really, really good here. It's responsive. Again, a lot of turbocharged motors have a bit of delay. I'm not feeling too much of that here. There is a little bit, as with any turbocharged vehicle, but I think they did a really good job minimizing that as much as possible. Going off of that, throttle feel is very consistent. I think a lot of modern cars have a bit of a dead zone. That is not the case here, as is to be expected with an M car, especially one of this caliber. So moving on to a bit of a discussion of steering feel, I think that's another area where the M8 is really different from especially the last generation M3 and M4. Now, you still definitely retain the same heavy BMW steering. It's very precise. You never question where the wheels are. I think they did a really excellent job of that. But like many cars nowadays, there isn't quite the same level of steering feel that you would get from the last generation of M cars, for example. And I think that's definitely more pronounced here with the 8 Series, which again is intended to be more of a grand tourer. But you're really not getting that level of steering feedback. The steering is quite quiet, which again, I think for this category of vehicle, that is what you want. And just going off of kind of that quiet feel, I think you could say the same for the suspension. And when you have this car in comfort mode, it's really soaking up the bumps. I think this can be a fantastic daily driver, regardless of what the roads look like around you. It does a really good job soaking up those bumps and giving you a more high-end luxury experience when you're driving along. So as far as the visibility in the cabin, I think, a lot of performance cars don't have the greatest sight lines. I think this one falls somewhere in between. I can't really complain too much about the visibility. they did a really good job creating that really sexy coupe profile, and I think that they also were able to balance visibility quite well with that. I know exactly where all corners of the car are. Visibility out the back is fine. This car does not have one of those camera rear view mirrors, but I really don't think it's needed here, even with the convertible soft top, which does have a slightly smaller rear window. I can see perfectly fine out the back, and as well as out my side mirrors. And of course, since this is a coupe and not the four-door, there isn't a pillar here behind my shoulder, which does reduce the blind spot that you would typically find in most four-door sedans, because this is really almost all one solid piece of glass here between the door and that window in the back. So blind spot visibility is great. Visibility out the front is solid. And I think overall, this is something that you could definitely daily drive without too much difficulty coming from either ride comfort or visibility. So, as with most M cars, upshifts give you a really satisfying crackle. This is a car that was designed for tunnels. Sound is incredible. They did a really good job capturing an exhaust note, which obviously is not too hard to do when you have a V8 like this powering it. But again, I think nowadays exhaust note has kind of fallen off with a lot of cars, and this is not one of them. I do think some people might complain and say they'd like to have the exhaust note be a bit louder, but I do think given the Grand Tour class of this vehicle that the exhaust volume is appropriate, and of course some quick aftermarket adjustments could get rid of some of the quietness, which again is nowadays is primarily caused by some of those new EU exhaust regulations. With that said, tone is great. It's super easy to get those crackles even at low speeds. You don't need to be gunning it down the road to get some really satisfying noises out of this car. Just shifting between the gears at 30-40 miles an hour is more than enough to get you some nice burbles. So I think comparing the seating position again to the prior generation M4, which we've had a lot of experience with on the channel, you are sitting a bit higher. I think in the M4 you're a bit closer to the ground. Again, that's really emphasizing the difference between M4, which is designed to be super sporty and give you that raw experience, versus the M8, which is going for more of that Grand Tourer executive sedan style of vehicle. So you are sitting a bit higher, and I think that also makes it a bit easier to get this thing up driveways. Have had no problem with that. This car does not have a front lift system or anything like that, but I also don't really think that's necessary given the ground clearance. Now, with the carbon package on this car, you do have to be careful about the kinds of driveways you're pulling into and trying to come in at an angle and a bit slower. But overall, I don't think that anyone will have any issues with the lack of front lift on this car. Another thing you'll notice, they did a pretty good job with cabin noise. I think it's a touch louder than you would expect to see from maybe some of the Mercedes products and AMG products. However, I do think that they did a good job insulating this car at speed. We're doing about 55 miles an hour now, and there's really not too much cabin noise or road noise. So this car does come equipped with all of the latest BMW assisted driving features, and I'm sure the BMW legal team might get upset with some of the terminology I'm about to use, but it does have some form of self-driving, which works pretty well. Now, it's not quite as advanced as what you see in Teslas, for example. This car is not able to identify red lights or stop signs, for example, but it does have auto lane switching, which I will demonstrate now. My hands are completely off the wheel, and it just did a beautiful job changing lanes for me there. It also has auto stop and go, so approaching a red light and the car will slow itself down, and then it would start it back up if I were to leave it on. So I think they did a pretty good job with this system. I've seen all kinds of different variations of it in different cars. I think This one works great if you're doing a lot of highway commutes, or if you're commuting a lot on a road like Woodward or Telegraph, which kind of has one of those green wave systems where you're not approaching lights too much. I think it does a great job there as well. And of course, I think the best use of these kinds of systems right now is when you're sitting in heavy stop and go traffic on the highway. This car can really take over for you. I will say it is a bit aggressive with the detection of your hands on the steering wheel. You do want to be kind of applying some little adjustments to keep it happy. Just leaving your hand on the steering wheel has not been enough to prevent it from shutting itself off in my experience so far. But other than that, it's a really, really well done system, and I think it's been quite reliable, and I would trust it to get me through my daily commute for the most part. And I will add, a lot of cars nowadays that have a lot of these driver assist features, it seems as though the steering has suffered as a result. And like I was saying earlier, there's not quite as much, there's no visceral, on-road feel in this car at all, not through the steering. It's a pretty numb steering system. But with that said, it is super precise. So I think that they made up for that there. If there was no precision in the steering feel, I think I would be a bit more critical. But again, given this car's place as more of a grand tourer, I think I am quite happy with how the steering worked out, and especially when you consider the number of advanced driver assist features in the car, I think they did a pretty good job balancing what an enthusiast wants from their steering feel with kind of providing a comfortable, relaxing driving Experience with all the latest tech. So switching into M2 mode now. I mean, this car becomes a different animal when you push that M2 button. Shifts are a lot crisper, it gets way louder, and all of a sudden this becomes a true M car. I think when you're not in that higher performance mode, you might question what kind of car you're driving, but the second you hit that M2 button, you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. This thing becomes super responsive, good throttle control. The upshifts are super quick, which again, the days of the dual clutch transmission are gone, just given that those systems are pretty heavy, and the advancements that have been made with the normal ZF 8-speed shifts are super quick. I have absolutely no complaints. It's very, very, very close to what Porsche is able to accomplish with its PDK system, which I still think to this day is the gold standard. But yeah, they did a pretty damn good job. I think my main criticism is this is a $165,000 car out the door, and the paddles that I'm touching have plastic on the back, which is a bit disappointing. There is some what looks like aluminum on the front, so when you're looking at the steering wheel, it looks quite nice, but what you're actually touching is plastic. It's not the greatest feeling plastic, and I think I would have liked to have the paddles be a bit more clicky. I think, last week I was driving the new Range Rover Velar, and that is not a performance car by any means, and I would say that the paddles in that car were a lot more satisfying than here. So if there's one really major piece of feedback I have for the interior, that would be it. So a little bit about the seats now. So, these are the standard bucket seats that come with the M8 in this beautiful secure orange color, which I think is just fantastic, especially in contrast with the blue on the exterior of this car. They're pretty comfortable. They're very heavily bolstered, and I think have a good number of adjustments. I've been driving this for a bit now, and they are not uncomfortable by any means. I think they did a really good job balancing the looks, the bolsters to keep you in place, as well as the comfort of these seats. I think you have no problem taking this car for a long road trip. And one more comment on exhaust note. I think if you're comparing this car to what AMG used to make, it's not quite as loud as those cars were, but the tone is good, and more importantly, you do get a good amount of sound that is transmitted into the cabin, which is always appreciated. I will have to take a look. I know BMW has piped in a bit of fake sound in the past, and I'm sure there's a little bit of that happening here, but it's not quite as noticeable. I think there's some cars where you can almost hear the engine coming from the floor where your speakers are, and that's not the case here. And I think whatever they are doing to enhance the sound profile, they've done a good job matching that with the engine that's actually in this car. So overall, happy with how the exhaust note sounds. It is a bit more civilized, which again, I personally think is to be expected with a car in this class trying to compete with other Grand Tours. Who is this car for? I think ultimately this is for somebody who wants a comfortable Grand Tour with the latest tech features, the latest driving assist features, something that's not too harsh that you can perceivably drive as a daily driver on a daily basis because of the comfort as well as the ease of use, but also something that has some good party tricks as far as that 2.5 second 0 to 60, as well as strong power delivery and that fantastic exhaust note. Now, this is a heavier vehicle. I think, you know, it's over 4,000 pounds, 4,200-ish, I believe. And from what I understand, most of that weight is, you know, in the front half of the car. So not quite the really great weight distribution that maybe most folks are used to when it comes to BMWs. But I think overall, for the purposes of this car, this is not something that I think anyone should expect to be taking on the track, for example. If you want a track monster, get an M3, get an M4, or, you know, explore all of the other fantastic options that automakers are producing nowadays. This is not a track vehicle. This is a drive around town, drop the top type of vehicle where comfort is the primary thing that the engineers were going for. So, you know, this is the type of car you'll take to the country club. It's going to fit your golf clubs. It's going to get you there in comfort and style while also being something fun to drive to work on a daily basis. So I would not recommend this for someone who's looking for the most raw experience. For those folks, if you're sticking with BMW, the M3 or M4 is the way to go, or even the new M2. I think this car also excels as just being a normal daily driver because of how fun it is to drive even at low speeds. Despite that 2.5 second 0 to 60, you really don't need to be pushing this thing to the absolute limit to have some fun with it. You'll get the noises regardless. I think, you know, even if you're just driving the speed limit, you can have a ton of fun with this car while also remaining comfortable. So overall verdict to close out this video, I've really enjoyed my time with this M8. It's a fantastic car, and I think especially nowadays, driving something with a big angry V8 in front, it's hard to find and much appreciated. I do think once this thing becomes fully loaded at that $165,000 sticker price, the only question is really, is the M8 what you're going for? Or maybe do you want to jump into something from the Porsche 911 lineup, which nowadays you're not going to be able to get, you know, a turbo or something, obviously, but potentially a Carrera, for example, or, you know, the new AMG GT is beautiful. I think both of those other two options are going to run you a bit more, and you're not going to have a fully loaded vehicle. So if you're looking for something that has every single box ticked in this price range, I think the M8's a great option. But if you want something a bit more exotic, a bit more impractical, then maybe the 911 or AMG options are more up your alley. But overall, this is a fantastic car. I absolutely see the use case. If you're looking for something that you can use as a daily driver, take anywhere you want with a solid all-wheel drive system, I think you really can't go wrong with this car here.